This is David Dubal, and I am very happy to have with me Alexander Toradze. You have heard of this pianist many times already. He was here and made a great sensation in the Van Cliburn competition 4 or 5 years ago, or maybe more, I don't know. We'll talk about that. And then he went back to Russia, and now he is back in America, living here, pursuing his career, which is a worldwide one. His friends call him Lexo, and he likes that name. I don't know how he got that, but we will be exploring those major issues as well as hearing Mr. Toradze in the Ravel Concerto Finale, the Prokofiev Second Concerto, a specialty of his, the Liszt Consolation, and then the celebrated Rachmaninoff Second First Movement. So we have a lot of concertos, at least movements, and I hope that he doesn't mind that we have to cut some of these. Well, you know, playing the piano is a crazy kind of thing because one doesn't even get a dime for practicing an hour, right? Have you ever thought of that? No minimum wage. Everyone's screaming, minimum wage. We must have $4,000 an hour. No one is paid a dime to practice.
Oh, not true.
Tell me. Because
not true. I think that while you are practicing, many other people are getting dimes and quarters and dollars.
I see.
And especially your neighbors. And they are happy to do that because they are happy to get away from
the piano playing. Yeah. When Liszt was teaching in Weimar, everyone was coming there in the summer, and there was such a din, such a racket of piano playing, and this was in an age of no air conditioning, that the city had an ordinance against Liszt's pupils that they must practice with their windows closed. Every single home had, borders from Mississippi to Russia. Everyone was coming to Weimar, and the town was just a racket of piano playing.
Right. Have you been in Weimar? It's a beautiful city.
No, I have not.
And, well, that sounds very logical. However, Liszt's house there is in a beautiful garden close by from the Goethe's house. And it's quite isolated, actually. And but I guess Liszt himself and his students were so emotionally involved in piano playing that it could have been heard in the neighborhood. It's a beautiful town. I have wonderful memories of this town.
Oh, wonderful!
And Bach was doing one of his non-major stops was in Weimar, and they have a Thomas Kirch there.
Yes,
he was.
Some of his early organ works were composed in Weimar.
Absolutely true.
And
town of Schiller.
Goethe.
Goethe. And wonderful. It has a wonderful hotel called Elephant, and I stayed there. And you cannot get rid of imagination that in this same hotel stayed such a person as a Napoleon while he was passing Germany and Prussia. And he visited Goethe, as you know. And then second great person was Thomas Mann. He was staying there too. And then someone else also, Adolf Hitler, was staying there. So such a contrast, isn't it?
Such a contrast.
Such a contrast. Well, that's what Elephant is about in Weimar. So why we were talking about Weimar?
I don't remember. I think I brought it up because we were talking about
Liszt.
Practicing for no money at all, and then we came to the fact that so many. I don't know why, but it brought us to a lot of information, didn't it?
I see. You have a time machine here. Are you influenced by this new movie? We really are eating geographical distances and time very fast.
Yes,
just like that, just by one word, and we jumped in 18th century and
sure. Well, we're in a historical time.
Right.
We like to look back and put everything together, and I don't know that we're creating too much new art that anyone wants, but we certainly, and that's your job in life, interpret art. Why is it that music doesn't seem to be as important to a public, at least new music, as it was in Mozart's time when he presented a new piano concerto every year, or in Liszt's time? Is it that there's so much music now that the interpreter has to play on a high standard that he cannot really be interested in new music? And the composer also doesn't seem to be able to play instruments, so he's not himself able to bring it to the public.
Several answers. Your questions are not. It's not. You ask not one question, so it cannot be one answer. First, I start from the end. Not every composer stopped making and producing music at the publicly himself, and Lenny Bernstein, one of the greatest examples of that. He plays magnificently, it conducts and conducts brilliantly, right?
Yeah.
Pierre Boulez does the same. Stockhausen has his ensemble, and he does music his own. So I think that many composers in the late 20th century are back to the habit of making music themselves. It was some gap in the middle time of centuries when after sensation of Rachmaninoff and Prokofiev, all of a sudden, they kind of their artistic ability was such a great. Of course, I don't compare Rachmaninoff's and Prokofiev's artistic ability. Rachmaninoff's much greater artist, but it was such a great artistry and such a great piano playing that then everybody was thinking why other Stravinsky is not producing the same level of artistic appearances, or Shostakovich was absolutely well. I'm now talking about mostly Russian music, but as well as in America, Charles Ives was not playing music at all. The new Vienna school, Webern, Schoenberg. Webern was a fantastic conductor, one of the most precise and most tasteful conductor, I think. So to answer your question very amateurly, because it really needs much more talk, and we cannot end that subject so easily. I think that many of them still are doing what they're supposed to do. So they compose music and they go and play. However, I don't think that it's very necessary. I think that when collaboration of Stravinsky and Ansermet produced many great interpretations.
Yes, they did.
Collaboration of Shostakovich and Mravinsky, the
Sure.
conductor, now he's a conductor laureate of Leningrad Philharmonic, produced enormous amount of fantastic, very high quality of interpretation. So the genius of performer added to a genius of composer makes unforgettable values. Same Rostropovich inspiring many composers. How many cello concertos are written for him? It is Britten, or it is Shostakovich again, or Prokofiev. He was adding to that composer's music something his own, and it is sensation always.
Yes,
it's like a birth of child, like a birth of. So I think that I think that nothing is wrong if composer decides to be silent. I mean, and decides to be non-performer. But of course, it's sometimes very. We are curious to hear how would he do his music, his own. How can you imagine to have a Beethoven's tape of his piano music, for example? Or
can I imagine? I don't know what I would do with it.
At the same time, it's I am very careful with everything which is very private, and I think that the same sort of I can say about epistolar things which every great man usually leaves, is papers or letters. We are curious to read their letters. We are curious to know their private life. But do we have rights for that? I don't really know answer to that question. We of course we know, because it will helps us to know a person and know his product, know his opus.
Helps us know ourselves in a way.
Helps us know ourselves in a way, right? But isn't his art or her art enough already for that? Why we have to be so curious to know what was his relation or her relation with someone?
Well, because I think it's part of a large humanity that we're interested in these super creators who have added to the humanism of our culture. We keep wondering, who was this Shakespeare? Who was this man who seemed to have the whole history of our emotions within his own compass? I just think it's a natural curiosity that we have.
Exactly, it's a natural curiosity, but
is it correct? Because if you're a private person, yes, I understand. You don't want
Right.
someone reading your letters.
Why should you make the person whom you love nude?
Yes. When the music, of course, no matter what, will sell itself. You don't have to, in an Eskimo village, tell anyone it's your piece or Beethoven's. It's going to make its stance on its own.
Absolutely.
We've had this wonderful discussion about various topics, and it can go on and on.
Right. I haven't answered one of your questions. You said that music is less popular.
Yes.
You said that music is, especially classical music.
Yes.
I meant. And why, while in Mozart's time he was writing a concerto in a year, it was much more interest. I disagree with it, because if you count man-hour or which they are spending listening music, it will be enormous amount of it. Will be starting with cars and elevators.
Oh, sure.
And in restrooms and restaurants.
Lexo, I would like to have a ban on 95% of the music in the world. It is insidious and drives me crazy.
Well, that's what America is about.
America is a land of music.
Right.
It's an industry of music.
Right.
It may well be the only thing happening here is music everywhere.
See?
Yes.
So they are listening to music.
Now, I must tell you that the only music I'm interested in is the music I play myself,
Right.
and the format WNCN, which I program so meticulously for the finest listeners in the world, the WNCN listeners.
Sure, they are.
I'm going to
finest.
give myself a plug and our dear listeners. And now we must hear the art of Alexander Toradze.
Oh, how boring.
We're going to hear the finale of the Ravel concerto, written around 1930 in the 30s, which he himself wanted to play, speaking of the composer and performer, but he started getting ill, and he then did conduct the first performance, and
With
he even
Marguerite
took it
Long.
to Japan that early in the 30s with Marguerite Long as the
Right.
soloist.
Margaret Long.
Now we're going to hear you.
Charming lady.
You knew her?
She came once. I've heard her, and
I've got to get to the music because I must hear it, and then we're going to talk about Marguerite
Okay,
Long.
but I have to tell that the conductor here will be Esa-Pekka Salonen, the I believe new star of conducting world.
Solomon?
Salonen, Salonen,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm very proud to say that, because this was his American debut, and he now is much more known. It was a couple of years ago, so I just wanted to mention that to WNC and listeners. So,
Let's hear you play, Alexander Toradze.
do I have a choice?
You have to be heard right now.
Okay.
I need to hear some music.
Sure.
The Ravel Concerto, the last movement. We have just heard Alexander Toradze in the Ravel concerto, the last movement, and obviously the audience was happy. Who conducted again, Lexo?
Esa-Pekka Salonen, young conductor from Finland, and
it sounded like a snappy, fabulous performance.
Right. I hope that very soon WNC and listeners will have a chance to hear his interpretation of major symphonic works, because
obviously you admire his work.
Very much so. We're very very happy working together.
Great. We're going to take a break for a commercial, and we will be back right after this message. This is David Dubal and my guest, the Russian-born, Soviet-born, however you say it, pianist Alexander Toradze, who is known throughout the world as Lexo. How did you get the name Lexo?
It's Georgian variation of a Greek name, Alexander.
So your background is Georgian?
Yes. I was born in Tbilisi.
Mm-hmm.
And
isn't that Armenia now, or was it once Tiflis?
It is it's Tiflis.
The same town.
Tbilisi, right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a wonderful, the prettiest place in the world, so I cannot go back there.
Wasn't Khachaturian born there?
Yeah, that's true.
He said it was a city of songs.
Yeah, he was born there.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
You can't go back?
And yeah, Balanchine was from Tbilisi
I
also.
didn't know that.
Yeah, because Balanchine was Balanchivadze. That was his real name. And so I cannot go back there, right? That's true. And but I highly recommend to WNC and listeners to get there and please greet town for me. It's beautiful place. It's little bit looks like San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's has unrepeatable charm, as well as San Francisco does, of course. Another city. So that's my little commercial for my own country. It doesn't need my commercial actually, but
now of course Americans don't know really about Soviet Georgia or those Transcaucasian countries. They're really not. It's not a tourist attraction, Tbilisi or any of those towns.
Yeah, it became gradually. It became, and I know that after Moscow, Leningrad, and Kiev, probably, which is Ukrainian capital, tours are including Tbilisi as well as Yerevan, and so I think that it gets more known, and I hope that it will, because it's really worth it.
Well, it's a shame that the world is so structured that you cannot go back to your hometown at this point. That's bothersome.
Oh yes, but it's not only my problem. I clearly am realizing that, and many of my fellows, my friends, are having the same problem, and actually we have to struggle through it and forget it, and I don't think that any life is without this kind of a very very heart bleeding points. They exist. That's life, and I have in mind my country, of course, always, and I'm very thankful what it did for me, and I will always try to pay back.
You studied at the Moscow Conservatory with the great teacher Zak?
Yes, back in Russia, I was studying with Madame Rozhok, my first teacher, unforgettable lady. So my teachers were wonderful, and that's true. Then I went to Moscow Conservatory and worked with Yakov Zak, but it was, when we were talking about teachers, and then I was lucky enough to meet Boris Zemlyansky, less known personage in the piano world, in the piano world, especially in the West, but greatest teacher and greatest musician in Russia. Unfortunately, he's not alive anymore. Not with us, but he left his knowledge and his love to the music and inspired many.
Did you ever have contact with Neuhaus, Heinrich Neuhaus?
Not directly, but his closest assistants, his closest pupils, and one of his assistants, Lev Naumov.
Sure.
We became very close, and we were very close friends. So that's a avant-garde of Russian music, Russian piano playing music now. There's a Lev Naumov, of course, is one of those persons, and so I still believe that Moscow Conservatory is extremely individual place for to study in, and by that I mean that it has such a enormous material by music which was written by composers, by Russian composers, that their teaching is also already directed by Russian music, if you understand what I mean.
Yes.
Knowledge, intellectual structure, powerfulness, emotionalism, that's all the qualities which Western critics love to admit and love to recognize in a Russian performers. Right. It comes, I believe so, it comes out of Russian music.
Yes.
It comes out of Russian music, which in its own comes out of all, the culture as a big background and a huge wall from, which keeps you together.
Yes.
And of course literature. But we can go further and dig. We don't need that. But I think that Russian music is what directs Russian performing art.
Speaking of that great tradition, we go right now into the Prokofiev Second Concerto's first and second movement. Prokofiev himself studying with a great teacher at the St. Petersburg Conservatory, was an amazing pianist, Esa-Pekka, who was Leshetitsky's second wife. So the great tradition of of teaching. She was actually the teacher of Paderewski, really, not Leshetitsky, and she was insane about beautiful sound, and she taught Vengarova, who then came to Curtis. You see, so the traditions of Russian piano playing have spread everywhere, and she taught Grafman and so many. Bernstein indeed studied with Vengarova.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My friend Yuri Krasnopolsky did.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I only want to mention about this particular concerto is that this piece is dedicated to Maximilian Schmidtkov, who was a very close music friend and pianist, close friend to Prokofiev. Prokofiev is writing this concerto while he's 22.
Yes.
And at that moment, Schmidtkov committed suicide for very personal reasons. And shock of young Prokofiev was such that he wrote these magnificent pages, magnificent music, and with absolutely utopic cadences. Utopic because it's so unreal to play, and especially at that time it was, and it will be always. And he wants to turn the world absolutely upside down with his desire to with his pain, and that I hope that his music does not need my comment, but I just wanted listeners to know that this particular piano piece is dedicated to Schmidtkov, Prokofiev's closest friend, who died, and it was written for his memory.
It's a 4-movement concerto. We're going to hear the first and second movement, and the conductor is John Covelli. Let's hear my guest as piano soloist in the great second Prokofiev concerto, first and second movement, Alexander Toradze. You have just heard the American conductor John Covelli with my guest, the piano soloist in the Prokofiev first and second movements of his second piano concerto, Alexander Toradze. Lexo, as your friends call you, and I think now I am your friend, on a small level, of course.
I am privileged to be your friend.
Lexo, that concerto is an extraordinary work, no doubt about it. I wish we had time to hear the rest of your very vital performance. It was a live performance, and we've had, a little bit of trouble with one channel, but it's well worth it because there is that vitality that you get in a live performance. The story of this is amazing because you came to this city and you were supposed to play, in your mind, the Rachmaninoff second, and the conductor was ready to do the Prokofiev second, and there was no music on the stands for that, and you had to work all night long to get this ready again. Thank goodness you did it. It must have been some nerve-wracking evening.
Right, it was one of those.
Pianists go through a lot, Lexo.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we have been talking about various subjects, and I want to mention the fact that although this is coming up, we should realize that you are playing in the Great Carnegie Hall January 22nd, which is a Wednesday, and that makes it 1986. And that will be your next major New York performance in that celebrated hall. Liszt is a composer you're fond of, to say the least, and this consolation we are now going to hear is one of his most beautiful kind of nocturnes. Liszt was wonderful in naming pieces. Consolation. Where did he get this inspiration from?
Yeah.
What is Liszt in your life as a?
I think that most of all his inspiration was Italian Renaissance oriented, and as well as sonnets by Petrarca or Dante Sonata.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very Italian.
Yes. Oh, he wrote so many. The Vienna, the Napoli, the Villa d'Este.
Yes.
He was very Italianate. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and his melody often is too.
Right. So I think that he decided to, the bouquet of consolation, which is 6.
It's a wonderful name, bouquet. Yes, it is.
And this is one of them. Third, I guess, one of the most popular.
And it's a beautiful work. Consolation in D flat. The artist, my guest, Alexander Toradze. From a live performance, we have heard the Consolation number 3 in D flat by Franz Liszt, the pianist, and I am sitting right in front of him, Alexander Toradze. Lexo, it's been wonderful talking to you, and I'll be right back with a concluding benediction from you after this message. This is David Dubal, and my guest tonight has been Alexander Toradze, and we have heard him in the Ravel Concerto, the Prokofiev, and Liszt. I wish that we could hear you in the Rachmaninoff second, which you have a recording of, and many other things. We will hear you, though, some other time. When you come back, I know that I will be at your Wednesday night concert, 8 o'clock, January 22nd, 1986. So put that down in your calendar. And Lexo, I guess you're going to have to start working for the Carnegie Hall, and I know you have 1,000 other commitments. It's been so great meeting you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and all the best to listeners of WNCN station, one of the wonderful stations which makes music even more wider, represents music and makes contact between music and listeners.
Contact is important, yes. Good contact.
Right.
Good seeing you and meeting you, and best of luck. And this is David Dubal. Thank you for listening.